There is a test that life gives every single one of us, and it does not announce itself. It does not arrive with a trumpet or a formal letter or a clear set of instructions. It arrives disguised as an inconvenience. A problem that is not technically your problem. An obstacle sitting in the middle of your path that someone else put there and someone else could just as easily move. The test is not whether you are strong enough or smart enough or brave enough. The test is much simpler and much harder than any of those things. The test is whether you are the kind of person who walks around it, or the kind of person who stops. The kingdom in this story was prosperous and well-ordered, as kingdoms go. The harvests had been good for several years running. The roads were maintained. The markets were busy and the children were fed. But the king, a man of quiet intelligence who had ruled for nearly 2 decades, had begun to notice something that troubled him more than any drought or border dispute ever had. He had begun to notice that his people had grown comfortable. Not comfortable in the warm, grateful way of people who count their blessings. Comfortable in the soft, passive way of people who assume that someone else will handle it. He saw it in small ways everywhere. A fence broken at the edge of the market that everyone walked past for a week before someone fixed it. A puddle in the main road that every merchant simply detoured around rather than filling in. A beggar near the palace gates that hundreds of people walked by every day, each of them assuming the next person would stop. The king said nothing about any of this. He was not a king who ruled by lecture. He was a king who understood that a lesson lands differently when a person discovers it themselves rather than being handed it. So he devised a test. Not a grand tournament or a formal examination. Something much smaller. Something so small, in fact, that most people would not even realize they were being tested. He rose before dawn one morning and rode out with a single trusted attendant to the main road that passed through the center of the kingdom, the road that merchants traveled, that farmers used to bring goods to market, that nobles rode to the palace and that ordinary people walked every day of their lives. In the grey pre-dawn light, he and his attendant rolled a large stone into the center of the road. Not an enormous boulder, a person of ordinary strength could have moved it with some effort. But large enough to block the easy passage of a cart. Large enough that you could not walk past it without noticing. Beneath the stone, the king placed a small leather pouch. Then he and his attendant rode back to the palace and waited. The day began. The road filled with its usual traffic. And one by one, the people came to the stone. The first to encounter it was a merchant on horseback, prosperous-looking with fine boots and 2 loaded carts following behind him. He pulled up short at the stone, assessed it briefly, and then steered his horse around it with the efficiency of a man who has many things to do and no time for détours that do not concern him. His carts rumbled around the stone too, the drivers not even glancing at it. Problem seen. Problem avoided. They were gone in 2 minutes. Next came a group of young noblemen riding together, loud and laughing in the early morning. One of them nearly rode straight into the stone before his horse shied away. There was brief laughter, some complaint about who was responsible for maintaining the roads, a short debate about whether it was the road commissioner's job or the village elders, and then all of them rode around it easily, still laughing. The conversation already moved on to something else before they had cleared the obstacle entirely. A farmer came with a heavy cart loaded with grain. She had to stop completely because her cart could not pass. She climbed down, studied the stone, tried to push it herself, found it too heavy, climbed back up, and with considerable effort guided her horse and cart in a wide loop through the soft earth at the road's edge, rutting the ground in the process. She looked back at the stone once as she remounted. Her expression was resigned. This was not her problem to solve. She had her own problems. She drove on. And so the morning passed. Noble after merchant after farmer after tradesperson. Every single one of them saw the stone. Every single one of them went around it. Some complained. Some did not bother. Some barely registered it. But not one of them stopped to move it. Not one of them looked at the obstacle in the middle of the shared road and thought, this is something I could fix. Not one of them asked what might be underneath it, or why it was there, or what moving it might mean for the next person who came down the road. By early afternoon, the king was watching from a concealed position on the road's edge with his attendant, and he was not angry. He was thoughtful. He was learning something he had suspected but had not wanted to confirm. Then a young woman appeared on the road. She was not wealthy, Her clothes were plain and worn, her shoes had seen better years, and she was carrying a basket that was clearly heavy, the kind of weight that comes from working rather than buying. She came to the stone and stopped. She set her basket down on the roadside with the careful movements of someone who knows exactly how much her back will complain tomorrow. She walked around the stone once, looking at it. Then she placed both hands on it and pushed. It did not move. She adjusted her position, bent her knees, tried again with her whole body. The stone ground slowly, grudgingly across the road. 6 inches, then a foot, then 2 feet, then enough. She pushed it completely to the edge of the road, off the path entirely, where no cart or traveler would encounter it again. She stood up and pressed both hands to the small of her back in that universal gesture of someone who has just done something physically demanding. She breathed for a moment. And then she noticed it, the small leather pouch that the stone had been sitting on, now lying in the road's dust where the stone had been. She picked it up with a small frown of confusion. She opened it. Inside was gold. More than she had likely held in her hands at any single moment in her life. And a small folded note that said, simply, "This belongs to the one who moved the stone." The obstacle in the road is always also an opportunity. It has been waiting all day for the right person. She stood in the road reading this note with the pouch of gold in one hand and the expression of someone trying to understand something that is rearranging the furniture inside their mind. And then, appearing from the trees at the road's edge, came the king. He did not arrive with ceremony. He walked to her quietly and thanked her. Not with grand words. He thanked her the way one person thanks another for something real. She was confused, then overwhelmed, then, when she understood the full shape of what had just happened, she began to laugh. Not the nervous laugh of someone standing before a king. The genuine laugh of someone whose whole day has just turned entirely upside down. The king told her what he had observed from the roadside. He told her about the merchant, the nobleman, the farmer, the tradespeople. All the people who had decided the stone was not their concern. He told her, and this is what she carried with her for the rest of her life, that the gold was not a reward for being strong. Many of those who had passed were stronger than she was. It was not a reward for being clever. It was a reward for the one thing no one else had that morning. She had looked at a problem in the middle of a shared road and understood, without being told, without being asked, without any reward being promised, that if you are able to do something, and you are there, then the doing of it is yours. Not by obligation. By the quiet dignity of being a person who does not walk past things they can fix. The story of the stone in the road traveled across that kingdom and far beyond it. The way good stories do when they carry a truth people recognize even if they have not yet lived it. It was told in markets and at dinner tables and in the particular way that parents tell things to children when they want the lesson to go deeper than a lecture. Sideways, through a story, where it slips past the defenses and sits down somewhere permanent. What the king had been testing was not strength, and not courage, and not loyalty. He was testing for something rarer and more important than any of those things. He was testing for ownership. Not the ownership of land or title or coin, but the quiet, chosen, daily ownership of the world you move through. The understanding that a road everyone uses belongs, in some real sense, to everyone who uses it. That an obstacle on a shared path is everyone's obstacle. That the person who stops is not the one who was obligated to stop. They are simply the one who understood something the others had forgotten. That the world is not maintained by the people whose formal job it is to maintain it. It is maintained, day by day and stone by stone, by the people who cannot pass a fixable problem without stopping. We all walk past stones every day. Some of them are literal, a piece of litter no one picks up, a door no one holds, a colleague no one checks on. Some of them are larger and heavier and take more than one pair of hands. But the question the king was asking from the tree line that ordinary morning is the same question the world asks all of us, quietly, every single day. You see it. You are here. You are able. What are you going to do? The gold is not always gold. Sometimes the reward is something better. Sometimes it is the particular kind of self-respect that comes from being the person who stopped. The person who looked at something broken in the shared world and said, "Not my fault, yes, but perhaps my responsibility." And then bent down and moved the stone. This story is shared for educational and entertainment purposes only. inspired by a timeless parable told across many cultures and generations about responsibility, character, and the courage of ordinary action. All characters are fictional and treated with warmth and respect.